Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni moli wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Chadley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted that you're joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Audible, Amazon Music, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Rajani LaRocca. She's here to celebrate the release of 3 new children's books. Hey, Rajani, welcome back to the Reading with Your Kids podcast. How are you?
I'm great, Jed. How are you?
I'm great. I'm glad we dodged that hurricane bullet.
Me too. I'm really glad to be here talking with you about books again.
Yeah. You know, Rajani and I were talking a little bit about, about how the 24-hour news cycle seems to just demand that every story be blown out of proportion and everything become catastrophized. And it's nice to be able to pick up a book with our kids, a book that somebody has been able to take time and research and write and have edited and, shared around and, not needed to be updated every 3 or 4 minutes.
Absolutely. And no caps. No all caps. Anything.
Well, we're really excited because we do have something to shout about right now. You have the wonderful, you're in the wonderful situation of having 3 books being published all within the matter of 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah. I mean, I'm really lucky. This has been a kind of wonderful year for me publishing wise. I have 3 books this year that are already out, and 3 books that are yet to come in, and will be out in August and September.
And for those of you who don't remember, Rajani is also a physician. So it's great that she has all this free time to write these books.
Well, okay. Listen, to be truthful about it, you know that it takes there's a lot of time that passes between when you write a book and when it comes out.
Absolutely.
So 2 of these, I had 6 books come out this year. 2 I wrote in 2018, 2 I wrote in 2019, and 2 I wrote in 2020.
Okay. So it wasn't pandemic induced.
Not really. No.
So let's take these books one at a time. The Little Golden Book of Kamala Harris. Tell us about writing about our first female vice president.
Oh my goodness. What a treat it was to write this book. First of all, Little Golden Books are so iconic. Mm-hmm. I grew up on them. The Pokey Little Puppy was like my favorite book forever. They're great. They just give adults a lot of memories, and they're like the right size. They're little. And, but that doesn't mean they don't have a lot of content. Mm-hmm. So there've been a lot of biographies, Little Golden Book biographies out recently, in the recent years. So Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Martin Luther King Jr. and some pretty amazing people, in kind of bite-sized biographies for really young kids. So, I was actually approached by the publisher to write this book, and I of course said yes, because who wouldn't want to write this book about our amazing vice president? And so I got to look at some other kind of Little Golden Books of theirs, and I figured out how many pages, and kind of then I was able to figure out how much information I could put. But I've got to tell you, Kamala Harris, for being a relatively young person, has done so much that it was hard to fit everything into a 24-page book. So I went and did a bunch of research. It had to be written pretty quickly, so I got a lot of my information from, art, newspaper and magazine articles, and it was really fun. She was like the first in many, many, many ways. Kind of the first, I think I don't know if she was the first, I can't remember right now, like the first female, attorney general of, California, but she was certainly the first Asian American, attorney general of California. And, she's just, and of course, like the, first female and first Black and first Indian American vice president. So it's, absolutely amazing. And she was incredible. And she, was born in California, but then lived in Canada for a while and then came back, and went to college and law school in the U.S. and then went on and kind of, fought for all kinds of people, in all kinds of ways. And now she's vice president, and I'm so thrilled to be writing a little book about her.
What was the most surprising thing that you discovered during your research?
So that she had a collection of Chuck Taylor sneakers and that she had all these different colors. And I was like, that's so cool. And that she basically goes everywhere in them. She's just so cool.
Oh, why do you think it's important? So Little Golden Books, I remember them. So they've been out for almost 100 years, but, why do you think it's important for a 3, 4, 5-year-old to know about Kamala Harris or Ruth Bader Ginsburg?
So I think that when you're really little, you begin to form your kind of version of what the world is like. And when you're really little and you see women and women of color and all kinds of different people kind of doing important things, it changes how you think about what your possibilities might be. And I think that's so incredible, right? When I was a little kid, when I was about 3 or 4, I used to say to my parents, I want to grow up and become a doctor, and that means I'm going to have to change into a boy. Now, isn't that interesting, mm-hmm. right? Because all the doctors that I met were men. And that's not to say that there weren't female doctors back then. Of course there were, mm-hmm. but not in my experience.
Right.
And I certainly wasn't, seeing them in books or anything like that. So I think that the books that you expose kids to when they're really little make a big difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Real important. Yeah. And I think that what a great time to start having conversations with your kids about these important things that are going on. If you're talking with your 3 and 4 and 5-year-old about the vice president and how this is important and asking them questions, what do you think that, we have for the first time, we have this first woman vice president. Why do you think that's important? It lets our kids know that we respect their opinion, we care about what they're thinking, and that is just going to help so much as they get older because they're just going to be used to the fact that, hey, my parents, they really care about what I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say that it's also important for boys to know that women can be in positions of power and do a great job. Mm-hmm. Because I think it's really interesting. I remember going to college and, I was having a conversation with a guy and he was joking around, but he was kind of like, well, come on, all the great works of literature were written by men. Like that was, and was kind of half joking, but also kind of like, come on, we know that. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, I think this is the problem, is that we just aren't we don't necessarily read the works of great literature that were written by women, So it's not that they didn't exist. It's just that we don't know that about them because we weren't really exposed to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there were probably a lot of great works by women that didn't get published.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And, great female artists who never made it big.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, we could talk about Kamala Harris the entire interview, but there's 2 more books we have to celebrate. I'm really fascinated with Where 3 Oceans Meet. Tell us about this book.
So this book is really a heart story of mine. So it was inspired by a road trip that I took with my family, a road trip that was in India. So I was visiting my relatives in India, and we basically went on a trip through South India, and we ended up at this place at the very tip of India, the southern tip. and it's called Kanyakumari. And they say that 3 oceans meet there. And it is the Bay of Bengal, the Arabian Sea, and the Indian Ocean. And I remember being there, and I felt like I could see 3 different colors of water out there. And it was just an incredibly beautiful place. But one of the things that I remember most about that trip was not just the ending where we saw this really cool thing, or like the really cool sights that we saw along the way, but the kind of small moments that I spent with my family. And so I wrote this book about a little girl and her mother and grandmother, and they decide to go on this trip to where 3 oceans meet. And the idea that is that each of them has kind of a different reason. So the little girl is like, I want to see the end of the earth and see what I find there. And the mom says, you know, I want to visit friends. And the grandmother says, I want to visit temples. And so they want to travel in different ways. They each pack different clothes. And they do all those things. They see great sights, like they go to some temples. They eat amazing food. They meet up with old friends. And ultimately, they get to this place. And what the girl realizes is that what she finds at the end of the earth is what she's had all along, which is the love that she has with her family. And so the metaphor of the 3 oceans is the same as the 3 people in the family. And even though the mom and the little girl live in the U.S. and the grandmother still lives in India and they miss each other, that they'll always be together, and that their connection is stronger than distance and stronger than time.
Boy, that's a really important message, especially now where families haven't been able to see each other. I just spoke to somebody who hasn't been able to see her family in over 2 years. And, you know, myself and my daughter is living in Baltimore right now, and we've only been able to see her 3 times, which is, you know, if I had thought at one point that I'd only see my daughter once every 6 or 7 months, it would be unheard of, you know.
I know.
Such important. I love that this book, where 3 oceans meet, it gives the readers a chance to take a trip through the amazing country of India, because it really is an amazing place that I don't think a lot of people outside of India understand. It's such a diverse place. You know, I hear people all the time say, "Oh, Indian people," as if it's just one. There's one variety, and it's like, no, there's like 28 official languages in India, so there's like a lot, and there's a lot more in use, and and there's a lot of cultures there.
Yeah, and you know, so this book is honestly like they take a trip through South India, and even South India is so varied in terms of kind of the climate of different areas, and certainly the language and the culture and the food that people eat. And there are so many beautiful things to see. Like, I only touch on a few of these things in the book because it's a picture book. We can't have them see everything. The illustrations are done by an artist named Archana Srinivasan, and she lives in Bangalore, India, which is where my entire family is from, amazingly. And her art is just glorious in this book. And she just does such a beautiful job of depicting the different settings within India. When my editor, talked to me about this book when they acquired it, and she talked to me about it, and we were talking about illustrators, she said, I feel like the 4th character in this book is the country of India. And so I want an illustrator who really understands India, knows it, in order to really make this book come alive. And wow, Archana really did it. So not only is India, just like all these beautiful scenes and these like really quintessential South Indian things, like there's a scene where they eat a paper dosa as big as the table. I don't know if you've ever had a paper dosa, but this is in Mysore, not in Mysore, in Chennai. That's where they go. And this paper dosa, like it's like literally paper thin, and it's huge, and it is as big as the table at which the 3 women sit. And they each like their dosa with some slightly different accompaniments. So they all are taking little pieces off this giant kind of pancake, which is just absolutely amazing and adorable. So, an Indian illustrator really already knew what that looked like and could illustrate that perfectly.
That's really exciting. I remember growing up and hearing that, the United States was so different because we are the melting pot of the world. And there's no other place in the world where all these different cultures come and live together, people of different races and ethnicities. And I am growing up finding out that is wrong, that there's, go to India and China. There's lots of places where this is happening. And I think that's important because while our nation was this grand experiment that we're still building, and hopefully at some point we will make it live up to the dream that we all envision it happening. The fact that it's also happening in different parts of the world, I think, gives a lot of hope for our world that we can at one point learn to live together and love each other.
Oh, yeah, I certainly hope so. I mean, I think if you look at the history of any country, you know that there were people there, and then more people came in, and then more people came in, right? And so there are all kinds of levels of culture in just about every place you go. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, I think that once you begin to understand that, you realize that kind of all these places are for everyone to share. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's incredible. So Archana does an incredible job with those illustrations, and then she also does such a beautiful job depicting the relationship between the little girl named Sejal and her mom and grandmother, and the love that shines through on these pages. It's just incredible. It's amazing.
Awesome. Well, I think the last book we're going to celebrate today may be somewhere up, kind of has something to do with your day job. I'm not sure. It's called The Secret Inside of You. I know when I've watched a couple of procedures being done on me, I find out there's a lot of secret stuff going on up there I had no idea about.
It's a little bit different.
Okay.
It's the secret code inside you, so it's about DNA. Oh, okay. So it's not about something you can really see with a procedure, thank goodness. Might want to save those illustrations for later on in life.
Yes, my wife isn't happy that my doctor gave me pictures, so sent me home like a little album. I'm like, look, this is where he asked me, do you want to see something special? I don't usually go up this way, he did, and it was really cool.
Oh my goodness.
So before we get taken off the air, let's talk about the secret code inside of you.
So the secret code inside you is a child's first introduction to DNA. And, it's, and it starts off with, why can't we do things that animals do? Like, why aren't we like, hairy like dogs or, buzzy like bees and that kind of thing. And, then it kind of goes into how come, people, look like their relatives and animals look like their relatives kind of thing. But then the third part of the book is how genes are not the only thing that determine who you are, how we make choices, and our choices also determine the people that we become.
That's really important. And I'm imagining, did you have any pushback from your editor that was like, hey, this isn't what we're supposed to talk about in STEM books? No, because, honestly, because that is the truth. Right. So not only is it, because the whole question, like there are lots of questions about a lot of diseases and conditions and kind of the general state of humanity about whether it's nature or nurture. And the answer is, of course, that it is both. Right? That you get a certain set of genes, but that is not everything, right? How you eat and how you move and like all kinds of other things affect who you become. And
we realize now that they actually affect how genes are translated. So that's the crazy part, is that our behavior can literally turn on and off genes.
Wow.
It's something called epigenetics that, is like pretty new since like I was in medical school, So it's pretty amazing. But I also wanted to be really clear to kids that what they do matters, that it is not all predetermined. Like the color of their eyes is predetermined and how tall they're going to be is predetermined, but what they look at and what they listen to and how they move and all of those things and what they're going to be, all of those things are up to them. And so yeah, it's a lot to put into a picture book, but from the very first draft when I wrote this picture book, and it was the first picture book I ever drafted, like a long time ago.
Okay.
All of this was all in there. Like I wanted that message to come true because it's absolutely essential. Especially to children who often feel like they don't have a whole lot of control over anything. Like people tell them what to do all day and they have to do it. But that their choices matter and they are also determining who they're going to be.
Yeah. I love it because for a long, since we started the Reading with Your Kids podcast, I've talked to parents about the fact that, hey, I know you have a little 4-year-old right now and you're already dreading the fact that at some point when they're 15 and 16, you're going to have that talk to them about drugs and alcohol and sex and all these other things that you're terrified about. Well, that conversation starts when they're 4 and 5 years old. And it's not about drugs and alcohol, but it's about choices that we make. And this sounds like the perfect book to start those conversations.
Oh, I hope so. Yeah. I mean, we have a lot of control over, what happens, right? And the other thing that I thought was so cool, because it's kind of one of these things that really got me hooked into biology and made me want to go into medicine in the first place, is the idea that all of these things are happening in your body and you don't have to think about it, right? That all the information is there. The blueprint is already there. And thank goodness we don't have to think about like, oh, better go feed those brain cells now, or like, better go digest that food now. Thank goodness we don't have to think about that stuff. But this, these kind of little tiny intricate things that are happening all the time without our knowledge are just so cool. And we can tell from DNA that like this cell is from a human and this is from a different species. Or, plant cells have DNA too, and plant cells are different from our cells. It's so neat. And how the other thing is that like 99.9% of our DNA is the same for all people. So it doesn't like, no matter how different we look or how different we feel from each other, we're really the same. The differences between us are absolutely tiny.
Yeah. I got to ask you, what mistake did I make in my DNA that forgot to water my hair so it stopped growing? Or is there, better even still, is there a way I can turn that DNA gene back on?
I don't know the answer to that, but I fear that if you turn that gene back on, that might have some other consequences. So, maybe we shouldn't go there.
Wow. So this is really, really fantastic. I mean, talk about a dream, an author's dream. I know we have a lot of authors out there that are listening to the show, and they're aspiring, they're hoping that one day their book will be picked up. As somebody who's right now celebrating the fact that 3 of her books are being published in the same 4-week stretch of time, what inspiration, what message can you give to those aspiring authors who are listening?
I would say keep writing, like have lots of projects, because you never know which ones are going to, take off and which ones, might need more work. And write about things that you love, because that shows. If you write from a place of love and passion, it always shows on the page.
We've had a number of authors, a number of amazing authors as yourself who've, very successful, and they've all shared that same idea. I always heard, write about what you know, but instead you and Jerry Spinelli and Jane Yolen, they all talk about write about what you love. That's so important. And it's obvious that you have written about what you love. And these 3 books, you love Kamala Harris, and you wrote about her in the Little Golden Book of Kamala Harris. You love India in your family, and that's what you wrote about in Where 3 Oceans Meet. And you love people, and you love the science of people, and that's what the secret code inside of you is all about. And what fantastic books to add to a family library.
Oh, thank you. And I should tell you, the secret code inside you is written in rhyme. It's a nonfiction book in rhyme, which I'm not sure I will ever do again because it's very hard to edit.
Okay. Now I know DNA are initials for. Did you try to rhyme the DNA, or did you put the whole word?
I did not rhyme deoxyribonucleic acid. Okay. I did not.
I wouldn't even try to say that.
No, yeah. I mean DNA, like you rhyme with the A. But for years, because I worked on this book for years, and for years I was like, I need to unrhyme this book because it's going to be a very, very hard sell as a rhyming book. But you know what? It refused to unrhyme. It kept saying, I need to rhyme. And I was like, okay, why? Like, what is wrong with me? And it wasn't until years later when, we'd sold the book, we know it was going to be a book. I was talking to a bunch of teachers, and I said, now I finally realized why this is a rhyming book about DNA. Because the nucleotide pairs in DNA, adenine and thymine and cytosine and guanine, they always pair up A and T and C and G. They pair up in that way. Always. And I was like, that's it. That's why my brain was like, you need to pair up lines because the nucleotides pair up. That's it. That's my story. I'm sticking to it.
The DNA inside of you was driving this creativity.
Yes.
Hey, Rajani, where can people go to learn not only about these 3 books, but all of the wonderful books that you've created?
You can go to my website, www.rajanilarocca.com. That's RAJANILAROCCA.com. And I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Rajani LaRocca.
Awesome. We've had a great, fun time speaking to the author of 3 great new picture books, The Little Golden Book of Kamala Harris, Where 3 Oceans Meet, and The Secret Code Inside of You. And we've been speaking with the author, Rajani LaRocca. Hey, Rajani, thanks for being back on the Reading with Your Kids podcast.
Jed, thank you so much. This was so much fun.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Jenna Brown. Jenna founded Love Smiles, an organization based in Chicago that is doing incredible things for kids battling cancer, kids all over the world. Jenna founded this organization when her daughter was diagnosed with cancer at the age of 4 months. It's an incredibly compelling story. Jenna tells us that she created the organization selfishly to help her be distracted from the agony she was suffering watching her child go through the treatments. And spoiler alert, it has a really happy ending. You don't want to miss it. Want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, want to start by thanking our guest, Rajani LaRocca. Please be sure to check out her books, her new books, The Little Golden Book of Kamala Harris, Where 3 Oceans Meet, and The Secret Code Inside of You. I want to thank my team, Alejandro Doherty, Fatima Khan. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.